Welcome back to the kitchen, chili fans. I'm so glad you could be here today. We are going to be creating some delicious green chili stew, and we are going to be using my mama's traditional recipe. Now, in families around New Mexico, we find different ways of making stew, just like we do enchiladas and other things that we make. But today I'm going to be showing you the way to get dinner on the table within 30 minutes. I've told you many times before about how wonderful it is to create these things, and I'm glad we're here together today. I took the time to prepare our pork before I had you join me in the kitchen, but what I'm using today is some thin boneless chops. And what I did is, I like to wear my gloves when I'm working with the raw meat, but I went ahead and I chopped it up into some small bite-sized pieces, and I cleaned up a majority of the fat. I do like to leave a little bit there for flavor. I'm also going to be using some chopped potatoes that I've already peeled. We're going to be using 1 large can of diced tomatoes. And remember, this is my mama's recipe, so I'm making it just like she did. We're also going to be using some hatch green chili. I love that chili and everything I can put it in. And some white onion. We've also got some wonderful garlic, and that is already smelling delicious. You know, I'm such a garlic freak. I love it. And for spices today, we're going to keep it simple with salt, pepper, a little bit of oregano, and some garlic pepper as well. My mom was a real big fan of adding cumin or cumino to her stew, and today I'm going to add just a tiny little spice of it because it reminds me of her, and I want to make sure I cook it just the same way. Let's go ahead and start with our Dutch oven. We're going to turn this on to a medium heat, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a small amount of oil. And when I say small amount, I'm always referring to about 1 tablespoon, maybe 2 at the very maximum. And remember, we can always add a little bit more as we go. Great. Now, as that's warming up, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start with our pork. Now, for those of you who would like to make this with beef, you can. I sometimes like to make it with a nice chuck roast, but traditionally I really go with my mom's recipe, and she always used pork. And one thing she was always sure of was making sure that our budget lasts. Being a single mom and raising kids in this world can be expensive. So she always reminded us that there were always affordable ways to add to expand this stew. And if you're making it with pork like we are today, follow along, and you'll see how easy it is to create. You can also do this with chicken as well. So let's go ahead and add that in to our skillet. Line a little bit out of there. And again, we're just going to coat that. A little bit of oil on the bottom. I like to use pork that is thin. And you can also use a pork roast for this as well. When you're using a pork roast, you want to make sure that you separate it completely when you're dicing it up and remove any of the tendons or any of the parts that might not be something that you would want to find in your stew. Okay. And that's getting nice and brown. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to spice that really simple. And we're going to go ahead and add in those spices that I told you about. Now, this lean pork cooks very quickly, and I do like to use this for my stews because it really incorporates a lot of the different tastes. You can really see the potatoes stand out, you know, with the pork. And thank you so much. I'm getting this cooking, and we've already have all of these prepared, so it's going to be real easy to put together. One tip that I learned from my mom, she's a very, very busy lady, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her while we're having our meat brown. I was raised by one of the most smartest, bravest, amazing women, and anybody who knows her would attest to all of those quality traits. But my mom was a nurse, and she was not just a nurse. She was an outstanding, fabulous nurse, and she specialized in a lot of different things, but mainly trauma. And my mom was also a forensic nurse and served as an expert witness for a variety of different court cases that involve violence against women, against children. And by being raised by somebody as brave and smart, as wonderful as her, when I create this meal, I kind of call it courage in a bowl. It's really exciting for me to share this recipe with you guys, and I'm glad I get to talk about her a little bit. Zia Cooking was formed for a lot of different reasons. A lot of things that we like to do and talk about involve family and food, and so being able to share that with all of you is really fun. Now let's go ahead, and I want to remind you guys, if you haven't subscribed, help me build my channel. Click subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it will give you a notification you can click on to make sure that you get to watch all the new videos coming up. And also, please, we try as hard as we can to get back to all the questions that you have, but if there's something that you would like to see me create, please make sure you leave it in the comments and we'll get to it as soon as we can. Now this looks great, and it's smelling wonderful too. So at this point, since our meat is completely cooked and there's no pink remaining on it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of flour. Now this is the way that my mom would do it, and the reason that she would point that out to me, or as she taught me, is we're going to go ahead and add it with a tiny little bit of drippings that are in there, but we want to coat all of our meat. And today we're using pork, as I've already mentioned a couple of times, and I know I talk a lot, but if you're using chicken or beef, you would do the same technique as well. So we're going to go ahead and stir that in there, letting it coat with all those delicious spices and cover up that pork. Quick and easy. My mom didn't mess around when she was in the kitchen, and I've shared with you guys a lot of this before. It was my job to do the cooking, but this was one meal that I would love to come home and be surprised to see the house smelling so delicious of green chili. And it really just is something that it just makes me feel good to share and talk about her. So let's go ahead and add in these onions at this time. White onions are my favorite to use when I'm cooking with green chili. And this onion made me cry today. It was a mean little booger this morning, chopping on it, but I'll tell you, as it's hitting the pan now, I am so glad that I took the time to do that. Oh, one thing I love about cooking is the delicious smells that come out of my pan. Putting it all together there. We're going to let those sweat out just a minute. When you're working with onions, you want to make sure that you get them to where they're translucent before we add in anything else. And stirring that around. That is great. Now there's a lot of ways that you can make green chili stew, but this is fast and easy, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to add in our garlic at this time. And stir that around and get that started. Yes, nice and blending well. And of course, we need that green chili. Can't have green chili stew without green chili. And that looks lovely. Now this is where we get going. We're going to crank that up to high. That's right, I said high because I'm going to be standing right here. You never want to walk away when you're cooking something turned up on high. And I'm going to be adding in some simple vegetable broth. And you can also use a caldo de pollo, a bullion. You can also use water and add extra spices. Use what you have in your kitchen. That's really New Mexico style. But Mom always used a vegetable broth. Sometimes when the cabinets were low and we hadn't got a box of stock, and I like to do that. And let's talk a little bit about the non-meat eaters that are out there following along. I am a carnivore. I'm married to a carnivore, and something happened. We gave birth to a non-meat eater. So a lot of my meals I adapt to include without meat. So when you want to prepare this in your house, you can simply replace pinto beans or kidney beans or black beans in place of your meat. And what you want to do is you want to add them in at the end after your potatoes are cooked. That way you don't boil something into a big mushy mess. And because I love a little bit of extra spices, I'm going to crack in that fresh black pepper. We did add some earlier, cooks. I know that you guys are following along. We'll go ahead and really get that in there. I love the pepper. Pepper, garlic, chili, yes. And let's go ahead and add in some salt as well. It's really important, guys, that when you're working with your spices that you taste it as you go. You don't like, we don't want anything that's going to be overspiced, but we certainly don't want to bore everybody to death and not have any type of flavor there. So how easy was that? My goodness, that was about one of the easiest stews I've ever made, just like my mom taught me how to do it. She was always busy, and sometimes when I would want to spend time with her in the kitchen, she would say, Carrie, I don't have time for that. I've got lives to save, and that's how we did it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a boil. Remember, we turned it up to high cooks. Once I get to a nice boil, I'm going to put the top on it, and we're going to reduce it down to a medium low, and we're going to let this run for 20 minutes with the top on while our potatoes get tender. We're going to get together, and I'm going to tell you about something called Muenster cheese bombs, and it's something I'm famous for putting in my soup, and I'm going to share that hint and tip with you as soon as we get back. See you in a minute, cooks. Wow, this looks incredible. This has come together just perfect. Those potatoes are tender, and all the vegetables have had a chance to fuse together. And remember, this is my Mama Lydia's famous green chili stew. She would often make this, and one thing I always remember about this stew is that she would pack it up in a Tupperware container, and she would take it to the hospital to share with all of the nurses when they worked those wild Friday nights in the emergency room. It's something that I like to share with you guys, and I'm glad that you were here. And one more time, I'm going to ask you, if you haven't subscribed to Zia Cooking, take a minute and click that button now. It's really important to me. I want to see my channel grow, and I want to be able to reach and have you share it with families and friends. And especially, I love this video because I'm going to sit down with my grandbabes. We're going to watch this video, and then we're going to come into the kitchen, and we are going to make this together as a family so that I can ensure that this recipe passes on to the next generation, and it's really special. So I'm glad you guys are here today. Let's talk a little bit about something I love to do, and those are my cheese bombs. Now, a lot of times when we're making soups or stews, we have grated cheese, and sometimes we'll just put that on top. But I really like to make tiny little morsels, tiny little cubes of cheese. And what I do is, once I serve them in the bowl, I like to add in some of the cheese in there to melt, so you get these random gooey cheese bombs inside of your green chili stew. It's delicious. Try it at home and let me know what you think. Oh goodness, I have been waiting for this. My mom has been on my mind, so I made this recipe. And again, I know I've talked a lot about her today, and I'm glad that I did. And I'm going to take a bite and see if I accomplished my goal and made it just as good as she did. Let's go ahead and add in some of those cheese bombs there. Oh, that looks lovely, and the smell, it is incredible. Green chili stew is a New Mexico staple, and I know that you guys are going to enjoy it. Give it a try and let me know what you think. Ooh, hot, gooey, lovely. Absolutely wonderful. Mama, this is for you. Fly with those peso angels. I'll see you guys next time at the Zia Cooking Kitchen. Have a great day.